All right, welcome to the first video of Velocity plugin development. This video is solely going to be based on project setup. A few things about this video and the series in general. This is not going to cover Velocity server setup. It's not going to cover Java development as a whole. You should be expected to know Java development at least somewhat, and you should already have a Velocity and backend server setup. So with that being said, we're going to be using IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. You can also use IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. They're both pretty much the same thing for your purposes. We're also going to be using the Minecraft development plugin for IntelliJ. This is going to help us actually start our project. So let's go ahead and go to that project tab, hit new project. We're going to call this lobby. The plugin we're going to be making is a dynamic lobby manager. Velocity does have support for default servers. We're going to go ahead and make one that allows us to change it on the fly. So basically, it's going to kind of overwrite Velocity, so to speak. This is going to be a plugin. Go ahead and put it wherever you want to. It's not going to be an issue. It's going to be for Velocity, and we're actually going to use Maven. Maven and Gradle, both pretty much going to do the same thing. It's a build tool. I prefer Maven. That's just personal preference. If you want to use Gradle, go for it. I'm not going to be covering it here. After you select Maven, go ahead and hit Create, and I'll be right back when your project loads. This might take a few minutes. All right, my project has been successfully set up, and it is imported. We want to go ahead and make some changes to this pom.xml, however, as it is not going to work for our purposes. Well, it will, but a lot of these changes are personal preference, and there's a lot of bloat in here we don't necessarily need. Number one is we want to be able to use modern Java features, so we're going to go ahead and enable the compiler plugin to use Java 11. Java 11 is what Velocity uses, so we'll just go ahead and stick with that as well. We want to add this maven.compiler.source and maven.compiler.target property. Those will affect the Maven compiler plugin later on. I also want to go ahead and delete this entire profiles tag. Profiles are for overriding default values in the Maven build process. We don't need those for now. You can use them later if you want to. We're also going to go ahead and remove the Maven templating plugin. We're not going to use that. We're also going to remove the site plugin, as we don't need a website for our build here for our project. And then I'm going to remove the Maven release plugin, and I'm going to change it to the Maven jar plugin. This just, again, personal preference. You can do what you decide is best for you. Finally, for the Maven JavaDoc plugin, I'm going to go ahead and change this to 3.4.0, just what's supported. You can change it to whatever you want, though. And then we're going to leave the rest of this blank. Go ahead and click that Maven rebuild project button there, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and open our lobby file, and we'll get started here. So right off the bat, you'll see that things look quite a bit different. There is an @plugin annotation, an @inject plugin, and an @subscribe annotation. What do these do? Well, in Velocity, you notice there's no plugin.yml over here on the left at all, period. It just straight up doesn't exist. In Velocity, whatever is annotated with the @plugin annotation is going to be your main plugin file. So Velocity is going to look for this and just load this class. This is also where Velocity is going to inject certain variables. So upon plugin, there's two stages to Velocity's plugin loading process. There's the construction and initialization. Initialization is an event which is handled through the proxy initialize event. We will use that later on, not right now though. And then construction, which is when Velocity actually constructs your plugin. So we're going to make a few tweaks here. First off, we're going to go ahead and delete this @inject over the logger because we want to inject it in a constructor. And we're also going to write that constructor now. So do @inject here. This is going to come from com.google.inject, public lobby. And we're going to inject a few things here. We want an instance of a proxy server. We also want our logger. Let's go ahead and import proxy server. So what is a proxy server? Proxy server is basically just the instance of Velocity that it passes to your plugin in order to allow you to use Velocity API features like getting backend servers or getting players that are connected to those servers. Let's also go ahead and create a private final proxy server up here just so we can reuse it in later areas of our plugin. And we're going to make this logger final as well. I'm also going to go ahead and add a getter here. This is going to be using Lombok. If you're using IntelliJ, this is built in by default. I'm just going to go ahead and add that to the class path. And then these are showing errors because we haven't actually initialized them yet because they are final. Let's go ahead and do that now. this.proxy equals proxy, and this.logger equals logger. Finally, I want to go ahead and log a message saying that our plugin has loaded. Logger.info, lobby plugin has initialized. All right, and that's all we need to get our first plugin started. So what are we doing? First, we created a logger variable and a proxy server variable. These are private final, as we don't want them to be able to be modified directly. We also added a getter to them using Lombok. What this is going to allow us to do is to call lobby dot get proxy or lobby dot get logger. Now, technically, this is going to require a construction of this class. So we can make this static, or we can figure out a different way to do this later on. For now, though, this is fine. Especially if we're going to be doing commands or events, we can just pass the proxy server to those classes, and we don't have to worry about getting them at all, as they'll be provided. We also have this @subscribe. @subscribe is how Velocity handles event registration. By default, Velocity registers your main plugin class as an event listener, so you don't have to register this event. But if you have events in other classes, you will, and we'll show you how to do that later on. And then finally, again, you have your constructor here. Velocity is going to construct this plugin. It's going to see that you need a proxy server and a logger to construct it, and so it will go ahead and inject one of those for you because this @inject annotation is there. Let's go ahead and build this by clicking the play button. And now that it's built, you should see a target over here and a lobby-1.0.0. So let's go ahead and go to our Velocity server and install that. All right, so here I am at my Velocity server. I am hosting one at my own house using a pterodactyl server. This may differ for you. It may be on your personal computer. Again, I'm not covering setting up a Velocity server. Just know that you need one. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in the plugins folder. So give me just a moment to do that. Here we are. And let's just go ahead and restart our server. And if we did everything correctly, we should see a message that says our plugin has initialized. And there it is. All right, and that's the end of the first tutorial. You have successfully set up your first plugin. In the next episode, we're going to be going ahead and covering events.